Hey everyone, Liam here, and welcome to this match preview and prediction for match between Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz in the quarterfinals of the 2025 Australian Open. Let's get into it. Before we get into the video, as always, if you enjoy the content on our channel, please like and subscribe. Really helps subscribe to quality shot tennis community. Well, we've got the matchup I think that most people want to see here at this tournament, Djokovic against Alcaraz. I would say probably it's the second favorite matchup that people would want to see this at this Australian Open. Obviously, the first one being Sinner against Alcaraz, then Djokovic against Alcaraz, and maybe Sinner against Djokovic. But I would say those are the top three matches, and realistically, this one here is going to be very exciting to watch. Both players coming into this one, quite similarly in solid fashion throughout their draws here at the Australian Open. Both of them, Djokovic has lost 2 sets on the way, Alcaraz has lost 1 set on the way. But let's first talk about, their fourth round matches. Let's first start off with Carlos Alcaraz. I mean, he was playing against Draper, who realistically, as I discussed in my preview for that match, he was running out of steam and gas in the tank, just playing back 5 set matches, especially for a guy like Draper, who we know has that sort of reserve that can go quite low sometimes, and can be sort of injury prone at times. We were hoping to see a 2025 season where we didn't have any injury scares or anything like that, and it just doesn't seem to be the case, because he had to retire after going 2 sets down against the Carlos Alcaraz due to injury. And hopefully it's nothing too serious, something that he can sort of take a couple of weeks and get back to his best. But realistically, we don't know yet. And if you look at that match that Carlos played, I mean, the first set was tight from start to finish. In the first 4 or 5 games, both of them had break points here, break points there on each of their serves. So realistically, it wasn't a sort of a given who was going to win that set. Then Carlos sort of got the lead in the set and was serving for the set. And then Draper managed to break back, and then it went to, got to 5-all. And then in the tighter moments, Carlos managed to sort of hit some amazing shots and steal the set 7-5. That's when, the momentum switched a little bit, and you could see Draper's level sort of not, I wouldn't say decline, but the energy that he had was lower, so it really didn't help him get his level of tennis to the level it needed to be to continue on and try and make a comeback. And then we saw, like, halfway through that second set, he started to not be able to move properly. His legs weren't moving. He was injured, and the gas was gone in the tank. So it was unfortunate, but it was sort of expected that Carlos would be able to get through that match, even if Jack was not getting injured, and maybe it would be a 4 or 5 set match. But Carlos had the energy in the tank. Novak Djokovic, on the other hand, I mean, straight to business against Lehecka. Easy stuff for him. Realistically, it wasn't even like he had to be at his absolute best in that match. He was just solid throughout, and that was enough. He was just consistent, made Jiri play that one extra ball continuously, and just really moved him around the court, as Novak knows how to do through all that experience that he has. There's 20 years on the tour, definitely worth something in that sense. And I think it's a good match for Novak, just because it sort of sets that little bit of nervousness, I would say, into Carlos coming into this one, just because the fact that Novak has been completely solid coming into this quarterfinal. So it's expected to be a good one. I think both of these players have met 7 times before. Novak leads the head-to-head 4-3. Obviously, if you look at last year's head-to-head, they were 1-all. Obviously, the one in Wimbledon, the Wimbledon final, where Carlos basically steamrolled through Novak and won that in straight sets. I would say steamrolled. Those last 20 minutes of that match were a bit nervous for any Carlos Alcaraz fan. And then obviously they played the final of the Olympics, and to be honest, that's probably Novak's best of 3 set match performance. It was incredible stuff, because both players were playing at extremely high level, and Novak just managed to realistically take the racket out of take the racket out of Carlos's hand and just completely dominate when in the important moments, which was great. I think coming into this one, although Novak does lead the head-to-head, and if you look at the head-to-head in the past, obviously there was the match in Madrid, then there's those 2 matches at Wimbledon that Carlos won, but then if you compare to where Djokovic has won, he's won, in Cincinnati, he's won at the ATP finals, and obviously, he's been able to win against Carlos more consistently on the surfaces, except for grass, than you would say Carlos has. Carlos has played well in those matches. In Cincinnati, he had that opportunity to win the match, but he just didn't manage to take it, and Novak found that extra gear. Coming into this one, it's a hard-court match, so you would expect it to be, if both of these players were in their prime, you would expect it to be leaning more towards a Novak victory, but you would still say, Novak's 37 years old here. Carlos is in just in unbelievable form, and realistically he is so motivated to get himself this career slam and cement his legacy so early on in his career. I think it's probably going to be a night match. I would imagine it's going to be a night match in Melbourne, so that could help Novak a little bit in terms of the conditions. But I think Carlos, he likes these conditions here in Melbourne this year. It seems he's only lost one set along the way against Borges, and that was a very tight set in any case. And realistically, I think, both of these players can win this match on any given day. My personal choice in this one is going to be Carlos Alcaraz to win it, just because of the fact that I think he is younger. He is, got a lot more energy in the tank, you potentially could say, compared to Djokovic. Who knows? I could be wrong there. I would expect, when it comes to a best of 5 set match, Carlos has a little extra time to sort of figure out what he's doing wrong. Novak knows what to do, and it just depends. We've seen Novak's level been able to stay up at a high level over the last few years, but slowly but surely it is not the same as it used to be. As we saw, last year against Jannik Sinner, Sinner completely dominated Novak throughout the season, and it's going to be, I think, another realization this year that he is still at that level where he can win a slam if everything goes well. But I think Carlos is just at a higher level at the moment. If we're bringing into the fact that, okay, the last meeting Novak won at Roland Garros at the Olympics in the final, yes, of course, but I think that was Novak's full. I think he gave it as absolute everything going into that one, just because of the fact that he knew this was his last absolute chance of getting that Olympic gold. And realistically, here in Australia, will he be able to find that energy and that sort of level to beat Carlos? He can, but I think Carlos will be able to tame him somewhat. I think it's definitely going to be a tight match. I would expect it to be a 5-set match. Every time I do a preview of their matches, I always expect it to be at least 4 or 5 sets in a Grand Slam and 3 sets in a normal tournament. But I think it's probably going to be a 5-set match, and I think Carlos edges it. It definitely could be like a 7-5, 7 or a 7-6 final set sort of scoreline. So it's going to be an exciting match nonetheless. I don't really care who wins or loses this one. I just want to see some great tennis from both players, and I want it to be exciting and long, because I think that's what these matchups between these two players are all about, and hopefully we get that as tennis fans. But in my opinion, Carlos just has that little bit of aura around him at the moment that will get him over the edge, and it will be interesting to see, maybe not. Maybe Djokovic does win this one, and maybe we see where Murray's sort of experience comes into play as a coach as well. These are the matches that Murray is coming into coach. Murray isn't coming into coach Djokovic for the first 2-3 rounds. He's there, but it's not really. Novak knows how to get through those opponents in those first 2-3 rounds. But when it gets to these matches here against the top 3, the top 2 players in the world, Grand Slam champions, this is where we'll see Murray's a little influence a little bit more, and maybe his tactics as well. So that'll be interesting to see. But nonetheless, I think Carlos wins it in 5 sets, but I'm definitely excited for a great match between two great players.